welcome back to All About the Disney Life. I am Danny B, the girl who is all about the Disney life. We are going to now get going with this new Disney category, and of course it is Disney on Broadway. And we are starting off with the very first Beauty and the Beast, which premiered on Broadway in 1994. So here are the facts all about Beauty and the Beast on stage. Number 1, the background and inception. After Walt Disney's death, Disney's animated movies continued to experience a noticeable decline in quality while struggling to attain critical and commercial success during the 1970s and 1980s from Walt Disney's death. The Walt Disney Company CEO, Michael Eisner, was hired to ensure the performance of the studio's next animated projects, despite having virtually no animation experience, but he majored in theater in college. Eisner's first hire as Disney's CEO was theatrical producer Peter Schneider, who subsequently became responsible for hiring more artists who shared similar theatrical backgrounds to contribute to the studio's next animated releases. Among them, lyricist Howard Ashman and his longtime collaborator, composer Mr. Alan Menken. Ashman agreed to work on Disney's animated film The Little Mermaid, which he and Menken would famously decide to approach as though they were scoring a Broadway musical. Upon release, The Little Mermaid was a massive critical and commercial success, earning 2 Academy Awards, both of them for Ashman and Menken's original music. Disney established a successful Renaissance period during which Ashman and Menken became responsible for teaching the art of transforming traditional animated films into animated musicals. Inspired by The Little Mermaid's success, production on an animated musical adaptation of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale began shortly afterward. Before the film had ever been completed, Executive Vice President Ron Logan suggested to Eisner that he consider adapting Beauty and the Beast for Broadway, an idea Eisner quickly rejected. The movie was released to immediate critical acclaim and commercial success, outperforming The Little Mermaid by becoming the highest-grossing animated film in history, as well as the first animated movie to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture. Once again, Academy Awards were won for Ashman and Menken's music. Several critics noticed the film's live musical potential, among them prolific New York Times theater critic Frank Rich. Laminating the Broadway selection at the time, Rich famously praised the songwriting duo for having written, quote, the best Broadway musical score of 1991, unquote, while hailing the film as a, quote, better musical than anything he had seen on Broadway, unquote, in 1991. Rich's review would ultimately provide Eisner and Katzenberg with the confidence needed to seriously consider the movie as a potential Broadway project. Disney was also inspired by the success of Broadway musicals such as Cats, Les Mis, and The Phantom of the Opera, strongly believing their production could be just as profitable. Virtually unknown at the time, Robert Jess Roth was appointed the production's director based on his various successes directing live shows at the Disney theme parks. Eisner and Katzenberg had opted against hiring a more established director in order to retain creative control over the project, believing that an A-list director would likely feel more inclined to challenge their vision. Since the film had not yet been released on home video, Roth spent an entire day rewatching Beauty and the Beast in theaters while brainstorming how to present its fantastical elements on stage, and eventually worked with choreographer Matt West and set designer Stan Meyer on their own proposal, with contributions from Alan Menken and Linda Wolverton. In a hotel in Aspen, Roth convinced Eisner and Katzenberg to greenlight a Broadway adaptation of Beauty and the Beast using a combination of 140 storyboards, costume sketches, fabric swatches, and demonstrating one illusion. Eisner retained final approval over all creative elements of the production. Beauty and the Beast became Disney's first Broadway venture, although Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a stage adaptation of Disney's animated film of the same name, had premiered in New York in 1979, produced by Radio City Music Hall Productions, Incorporated. Number 2, the writing and screen-to-stage modifications. Roth summarized Beauty and the Beast as a story about seeing past the exterior of a person and into his or her heart. Linda Wolverton learned that Disney had commissioned her to adapt the animated film she had written into a Broadway musical while she was vacationing with her family in Maui. And her initial response to the idea? Yikes. In the process of adapting her own animated screenplay into a full-length 2-act libretto for the stage, Wolverton contributed several distinct changes to the material, specifically instilling more emotional depth into each main character. The writer expanded the story of both fleshing out each character and allowing room for new musical numbers. Namely, Wolverton made the Beast a more threatening yet sympathetic figure. The writer expanded upon his characterization by developing the Beast into a fuller character, aided by the addition of his own song, If I Can't Love Her. Meanwhile, the book-loving Belle was adapted into a more headstrong and determined heroine. Belle and the Beast's relationship benefits from a new scene Wolverton wrote specifically for the stage, during which the couple read in the castle's library. Belle introduces the Beast to the tale of King Arthur and reads the book to him, to which the Beast responds by showing genuine vulnerability for the first time. Perhaps Wolverton's most significant modification involves the enchanted objects, and the decision to have the enchantress spell gradually transform the castle staff of loyal servants into household objects throughout the entire duration of the musical, as opposed to having already done so immediately at the beginning. Essentially, becoming completely inanimate if the spell is not broken in time would look like each character is dying, which ultimately adds to the story's drama. Consequently, this plot decision enhanced the story into a tale about people being forced to make a difficult decision, as opposed to solely a story of a man struggling to retain his humanity, in turn providing the audience with an opportunity to care about the supporting characters dramatically. Generally, Wolverton's book remained quite faithful to the original text. The plot is essentially the same, but particular detail had been added in order to flesh out the story. The Feather Duster and Wardrobe characters, only minor characters in the animated film, were broadened into fully realized supporting characters and named for the first time. Wolverton named them Babette and Madame de la Grande Bouche. Taking her job seriously, Wolverton worked relentlessly on revising the script and often took the cast suggestions into consideration. Despite the musical having been based on a pre-existing story by Jean-Marie Le Prince de Beaumont, Wolverton retains a sole writing credit for her work, as the story had long lapsed into the public domain by that time. Number 3, the casting. In her Broadway debut, then 22-year-old actress Susan Egan was cast as the musical's original Belle. Despite longing to originate a Broadway role, the actress was initially reluctant to audition for Beauty and the Beast because she thought it was a terrible idea for Disney to put a cartoon on Broadway. Additionally, Egan felt she was not attractive enough to play a character noted for being the most beautiful girl in the village, but her agent managed to convince her otherwise. Without any film to reference, Egan determined that Belle is supposed to be a quirky character and approached her funnier than how she is depicted in the movie, in turn getting laughs from the producers, who were amused by her unique interpretation, and eventually earning several callbacks. Meanwhile, her competition of 500 actresses, many of whom were simply offering imitations of voice actress Paige O'Hara's original performance, continued to be eliminated. This is why I love Susan Egan. You probably know her. She got to be Meg from Hercules. Like, she went on from stage to being a Disney heroine in a legit Disney movie of her own. And I like seeing a couple of like the old school performances of Susan Egan. She made that character her own. She did not copy Paige O'Hara, because there's only one Paige O'Hara, and that is what we got from the movie. She took a completely different spin. Egan's final week of auditions, during which she sang for Alan Menken for the first time, was particularly challenging. On her last day of auditioning, Egan auditioned opposite several actors, trying out for the roles of the Beast and Gaston. As the day concluded, Roth directed Egan to approach the role as a straight and genuine, and she was ultimately cast upon proving capable of playing Belle both straight and comically. Only afterward did Egan celebrate by finally renting and watching the entire movie for the first time. Actor Terrence Mann was cast as the Beast. Mann had previously performed as Javert in Les Mis, for which he was nominated for a Tony Award. Actor Gary Beach was cast as Lumiere. Beach had seen Beauty and the Beast premiere at the E.I. Captain Theater, prior to which he had watched a stage rendition of the film and thoroughly enjoyed both. 2 years later, Beach received a call from casting director Jay Binder, inviting him to play Lumiere during their workshop of Beauty and the Beast, but kept turning down the offer due to having prior commitments to an upcoming show starring comedian Carol Burnett. It was only at Burnett's insistence that Beach finally accepted. Amidst a cast of relatively obscure actors, Tom Bosley, famous for his roles on the television series Happy Days and Murder, She Wrote, became the show's most recognizable performer when he was cast as Belle's father, Maurice. Number 4, the musical numbers and choreography. All 8 of the film's original songs were retained for the Broadway adaptation. The song Human Again had originally been written for the film, but it was ultimately cut due to time and story constraints. The musical number was finally resurrected for and included in the production. Composer Alan Menken returned to the project to write 6 new songs for the musical. Lyricist Tim Rice joined Menken to co-write the new numbers, replacing Howard Ashman, who died in 1991 before the film was released. Both Menken and Rice initially approached the project with some resistance. Menken's emotional attachment to the music he had written with Ashman made him fear Disney's vision of a Broadway musical would transform Beauty and the Beast into an attraction too similar to what one would find at Walt Disney World. Meanwhile, Rice, who worked with composer Andrew Lloyd Webber as his lyricist on Broadway musicals like Jesus Christ Superstar and Evita, was hesitant to replace Ashman in fear of worsening Beauty and the Beast. Notably, Rice had similarly replaced Ashman to write the remaining songs for Disney's Aladdin after Howard Ashman died. Ultimately, the collaboration resulted in approximately half of the Broadway score having co-writing credits by Menken and Ashman, while the other remaining are Menken and Rice compositions. I love that. I love the fact that they paid tribute to Howard Ashman by keeping those credits. Like for the original songs that they wrote together for the movie, they give Howard Ashman the credits in the Broadway musical, and then you have Menken and Tim Rice for the other songs for the musical. I think it's just touching. Most of the new material focused on character development, such as Gaston's Me, Belle's Home, and The Beast's If I Can't Love Her. Other new songs, Maurice's fatherly ballad, No Matter What, and Gaston Le Fou and Monsieur des Arcs' villainous number Maison de Lune, were written to flesh out the plot. In 1998, a 7th song entitled A Change in Me was written 4 years into production's run, specifically for R&B singer Toni Braxton when she joined the cast to play Belle, and appears during the show's second act. The idea of this song originated while Braxton was still in negotiations with Disney to appear in the show for a total of 3 months, but various circumstances led to the singer constantly delaying signing the contract. It was not until Braxton had dinner with Menken, Rice, and West that she finally agreed to sign the contract under the condition that a brand new song be written specifically for her, which an intoxicated Tim Rice drunkenly offered and promised her that. When confronted by Roth about his promise upon learning of it from Braxton a few days later, within 24 hours, Tim Rice successfully discovered a location within the musical to include the new song, specifically where Belle tells Maurice about how the time that she spent with the Beast in his castle has changed her. The song ultimately became the ballad A Change in Me, which lyrically addresses the ways in which Belle's initial motivations have ultimately changed during her imprisonment, explaining to Maurice that she has matured and no longer longs for what she originally cited in the song Belle the Reprise. Both the song and Braxton's performance were well received, and A Change in Me has been included in the musical ever since. David Friedman served as music supervisor, while John Petrofessa Jr. handled sound design. Unlike in the movie, Belle actually performs and dances alongside the enchanted objects during Be Our Guest, which resembles a high-energy Vegas number similar to the musical Ziegfeld Follies. The original Broadway cast recording of Beauty and the Beast was released by Walt Disney Records in 1994. Similar cast albums followed suit, including Australian and Japanese recordings in 1994 and 1996. A Change in Me has yet to be included on any official English language cast recordings, though the original Belle, Susan Egan, included that song on her album called So Far. Number 5, the sets and costumes. Stanley Meyer designed the original production set. Following Disney's instructions to make the animated film come to life, Meyer's set was very much a similar interpretation of the film. Meyer found it tricky to translate two-dimensional environments from on-screen into a 3D world on stage. The West Wing's appearance has mirrors of its resident, the Beast, being hideous on the outside but beautiful when the audience finally sees the inside of it. In stark contrast to popular musicals, The Phantom of the Opera and Into the Woods, Beauty and the Beast set resembles a hybrid of Gothic Victorian and Louis Quinze. Disney Park Company CEO hired costume designer Anne Hould Ward to design the musical's costumes because the studio enjoyed a certain aesthetic she used in her previous work and allowed her much creative freedom. Hould Ward accepted Disney's offer because she was interested in seeing exactly how a corporate company producing a Broadway musical for the first time would change the Broadway world. Conceptualization began in the summer of 1992. For research purposes, Disney encouraged Hould Ward to reference the animated film. Linda also researched clothing worn throughout the late 18th century, during which the original fairy tale was written, and spent 1 year researching household items the way they looked during the mid-1700s. Additionally, Huld Ward visited the Beauty and the Beast's original animators, spending 1 week learning how they created their characters to ensure they would be recognizable to those from the movie. However, Huld Ward also decided her own creations would not exactly replicate the movies. Basing the costumes on the Rocco art movement, Huld Ward presented her initial ideas to Eisner and COO Frank Wells. Once approved, Huld Ward and her team spent the following year creating prototypes of each major costume. Physically designing Beauty and the Beast costumes was more collaborative between designer and actor than most other Broadway productions Huld Ward previously worked on. She frequently sought input from the cast to make sure they were able to move. Designing Belle's costume was easy task for Huld Ward. The character was originally dressed in standard Disney heroine attire and so replaced with a more elaborate costumes. Once Belle meets the Beast, Huld Ward based the character's famous yellow ball gown from several historic portraits. The gown became the first costume built for the production to accommodate Disney's mandate to market the dress in photo shoots and commercials starring Susan and Terrence 6 months prior to rehearsals. Weighing 45 pounds, the dress is a combination of various patterns and materials, including a hoop skirt, silk, barricade, beading, flowers, and bows. Surprised Susan Egan was able to walk and dance in that thing. Too large to fit inside Egan's dressing room after the ballroom sequence, undressing required help from 3 backstage crew members. They used wires to hoist the dress into the rafters. It would be stored until the next performance. A lot of time spent designing the Beast costume. Physically creating was especially challenging due to requirements to allow vocal movement of the performer to show through. A wire frame was utilized to maintain the costume's shape, which evokes heavy metal fashion until substituted for a black Oscar de la Renta-inspired velvet suit when the Beast violently transforms into a prince. The challenge of designing Belle and the Beast's costumes in comparison to the difficulty of creating the enchanted objects of several costumes including intricate wiring, prosthetics, and pyrotechnics. Because the castle's enchanted staff is slowly transforming into objects, shown at various stages of transformation without completely becoming the objects themselves, Huld Ward was required to create several different costumes for each character to depict the transformation as the show progresses. Meanwhile, the costume of Lumiere alone was originally built by a team of 40 people, including the bases of a prosthetic candle, hair, and vacuum form specialist. Pyrotechnician responsible for equipping the costume's pyro unit with butane, and a man operating the butane tank were each separate individual. A system of wired frame was used to help actors support their characters' heavy outfits. Such elaborate costumes had never been designed for a Broadway production before. Cogsworth's costume features a fully functioning clock on his face. Meanwhile, Madame de la Grande Bouche was the production's most expensive costume. The musical originally relied on heavy prosthetics and elaborate costuming in an attempt to make the musical resemble the movie as closely as possible. In an attempt to replicate the film's famous movie poster, Egan was dressed in flats, while Man was standing on heel-high stilts to establish a more dramatic height difference. The elaborate costumes resulted in their fair share of technical difficulties, malfunctions, and performance restrictions, many of which manifested during the 7-week tryouts in Houston. The costumes left little room for performers to change between scenes, and air conditioners were fastened to them, regulating the air temperature. In general, the weight of the enchanted objects' costumes limited dancing. Chiropractors and therapists remained on standby to assess Beth Flower, who played Mrs. Potts, in her costume required to always keep her one arm in the air. Oh, that's got to be tiring after a while. I don't know how. To all the actresses who have played Mrs. Potts on stage who had to keep their arm up in the air, props to you. Beach compared holding up 2 propane tanks used to represent Lumiere's candles to carrying 2 hams around a grocery store 2.5 hours. Oh my gosh, I always thought that they were just holding. I always thought the Lumiere character was like holding, but it's it's flat on their hands. Like, he's like this. Commitment to your craft, people. Holy cow. To build his stamina, Beach would carry the tanks during rehearsal. Beach's hand caught on fire during one performance, which he didn't notice until Terrence Mann kind of did one of these, like, hello, do you not see your hand is on fire? While dancing, the movement of Egan's heavy ball gown caused its skirt to constantly pull her in opposite direction of which way she turned. Mann linked performing in the Beast costume to wearing several heavy winter coats, comparing the wig to 4 Angora cats and gaffer taping them to your head and then running around the block 10 or 12 times. How did he not faint? Like, you're in like a fur suit with prosthetics on your face and it's hot and you're moving and you're singing, and if you're dancing, how do you not pass out? Gould Ward adjusted the costumes to accommodate the locations as the production traveled to various theaters. Number 6, the lighting and special effects. Lighting designer Natasha Katz was hired to work on Beauty and the Beast. When Disney first approached Katz to offer her the job, several of Katz's cohorts, specifically other lighting designers, attempted to discourage her from accepting in fear of changing the appearance of musical theater forever. In hindsight, Katz defended Disney's work, explaining Beauty and the Beast didn't bring theater back to New York, but it did change the dynamic, no question about it, of the business. Known for assisting David Copperfield with his illusions, Roth hired Jim Steinmeyer to work on Beauty and the Beast. Steinmeyer had previously contributed to the musical Merlin. The Beast's transformation sequence during the second act was much discussed. It took about 11 weeks to set the design. Number 7, the productions. You do have to remember there have been a lot of versions and production the companies. It is still Disney, but there's a lot of this is going to take a while, so be patient with me as I go through this. Start off with Houston, which was in 1993. Beauty and the Beast premiered in a joint production of Theater Under the Stars and Disney's Theatrical at the Music Hall in Houston, Texas, from November 28, 1993 through December 26, 1993. Previews began November 27, 1993. Then we have the original Broadway production, which was on from 1994 until 2007. The show began previews on Broadway at the Palace Theater on March 9th, 1994, with the official opening on April 18th, 1994, and ran there until September 5th, 1999. The show then transferred to the Luntfontein Theater on November 11th, 1999, with an official opening date of November 16th, 1999. The musical closed on July 29th, 2007, after 46 previews and 5,461 performances, and it's Broadway's 10th longest running production in history. The production holds the record of being the longest running production at both the Palace Theater, where it opened, and the Luntfontein Theater, where it closed its Broadway run. The production cost an estimated $12 million, arguably higher, becoming the most costly musical number of all time. However, some analysts estimate the cost to be closer to $20 million. Next up, we have the TV Ice Show special, which came out in 1996. On November 8th, 1996, Disney's Beauty and the Beast, a concert on ice and ice show adaptation, was broadcast on CBS. The special was produced by Macabre Productions and Rodin Productions and featured songs from the musical. It starred Extrina Gordieva as Belle and Victor Petrenko as the Beast, with Scott Hamilton as Lumiere, while Steve Binder directed and was hosted by James Barber and Susan Egan. Then we have the West End production, which premiered in 1997 and ended in 1999. The West End production opened at London's Dominion Theatre on April 29th, 1997. The production ended on December 11th, 1999. The production won the American Express Award for Best Musical Theater at the 1998 Laurence Olivier Awards. Against other nominees, Enter the Guardsman, The Fix, and Lady in the Dark. Then we have the West End Revival, which came out in 2022. The UK and Ireland Reimage Tour, which opened in August of 2021, played a limited London Palladium engagement from June 24th through September 17th, 2022. Then we have the U.S. National Tours. The show had 5 U.S. national tours. The first national tour launched on November 15, 1995 at the Orpheum Theater in Minneapolis and closed in 1999. A second national tour opened in 1999. This production closed in 2003. The third national tour opened in 2001 and closed in 2003. The three touring companies visited 137 venues in 90 North American cities. About 5.5 million people in the United States and Canada saw these tours. The fourth national tour of Beauty and the Beast began February 2010, opening in Providence, Rhode Island. Under the direction of the original Broadway creative team, the show featured all new sets and costumes. The tour was the longest in the show's history, running until July 2016. A North American tour based on the UK and Australian productions opened in June of 2025 at the Cadillac Palace Theatre in Chicago. Then we have the UK national tours. The UK national tour began on November 2nd, 2001 at the Empire Theatre in Liverpool, with stops in Bristol, Birmingham, Dublin, Southampton, Manchester, and ended on April 12th, 2003 at the Playhouse Theatre in Edinburgh. I saw that on my cruise when we went to Edinburgh. In September of 2020, it was announced that the production embarked on a new UK and Ireland tour, which was scheduled to open at the Bristol Hippodrome on August 25th, 2021, with stops in Liverpool, Edinburgh, Cardiff, Sunderland, Birmingham, Manchester, and Dublin, with further dates to be confirmed. The branding and promotional graphics, including posters, venue banners, and advertising, were updated for this and subsequent tours. The new design features silhouettes of Belle and the Beast embracing over a rose, their shapes dissolving into a swirling tower of rose petals on a purple background. The imagery is accompanied by metallic logo and type, based on the Rococo-style typeface, Spain. Then we have the international productions. Beauty and the Beast has been performed in more than 40 countries, including Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, China, Egypt, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, India, Indonesia, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Japan, Lebanon, Mexico, Netherlands, Norway, Philippines, Poland, Qatar, Romania, Russia, Singapore, South Africa, South Korea, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Taiwan, Thailand, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, and United States. Over 35 million people have seen the show worldwide, and it has grossed more than $1.7 billion. On July 15th, 1995, the musical began its original Australian run in Melbourne at the Princess Theatre before moving on to Sydney. In 1995, the musical opened in Japan and was performed by the Shiki Theatre Company. The musical contributed to tour Japan until May 2017. An updated permanent production opened at the Mahama Amphitheater at Tokyo Disney Resort, produced by Shiki Theatre Company in association with Disney Theatrical Productions in October of 2022. The Toronto production opened at the Princess of Wales Theatre on July 25th, 1995, and closed on August 30th, 1997. The lesser-known Halifax production at the Neptune Theatre was the longest-running production in the theater's history. A Los Angeles production opened at the Shubert Theatre on April 12th, 1995, and closed on September 29th, 1996. Most of the original Broadway cast returned, including Susan Egan, Terrence Mann, Gary Beach, Beth Fowler, Burke Moses, and Tom Bosley. The sets in the production were widely considered to be the largest out of all the musical's productions in the world. After the show closed in Los Angeles, all of the sets were transferred for the production in Mexico City in 1997. A production opened in Vienna, Austria in 1995. In December of 1997, the musical opened in Stuttgart at the Palladium Theater, Stuttgart, and played there until December 22nd, 2000. In 1999, the musical opened in China. On March 4th, 2005, Beauty and the Beast had its Scandinavian premiere at the Göteborg Opera. I hope I said that right. On June 16, 2005, the musical began its Philippine run at the Merlico Theater, and it was produced by Atlantis Productions. In September of 2005, a production in Budapest, Hungary premiered at the Budapest Theater, because I can't say this last part of the name of the, I'm assuming it says Opera House. In South America, Argentina was the first country to produce it. It ran from November 26, 1998 at the Teatro Opera in Buenos Aires until August 15, 1999, before opening again in 2010. Brazil was the second country to host the musical. Disney had plans to bring it to the country in 1999 after the success in Argentina, but nobody really knew if it would work. 3 years later, in 2002, Beauty and the Beast finally opened in Brazil in Teatro Abril, one of the biggest theaters in the country. It was a huge hit for more than 1.5 years. Beauty and the Beast remained for 6 months at Teatro Abril. Even though the play was brought back as a way to try to recoup some of the money lost in Brazil's version of Miss Saigon, this second incarnation of Beauty and the Beast failed to create any critical buzz or to be a box office success. In Spain, there have been 3 productions of the show. The first one, based on the original Broadway production, had its Madrid debut on December 2nd, 1999 at Teatro Lope de Vega. After a successful run of 27 months and about 900 performances, the production finally closed on March 3rd, 2002, becoming the longest-running musical ever in Madrid at that time. In 2007, a second version produced by Stage Entertainment premiered on October 3rd at Teatro Coliseum, Madrid, for a limited run of 6 months, but the closing was postponed due to a successful season. The production closed on January 11th, 2009, and was transferred to Barcelona, where it ran from February 26, 2009 to January 10th, 2010 at the BTM. In 2012, the Stage Entertainment version was relaunched as a touring production, beginning performances on September 6 at Teatro Calderón Valladolid. In 2005, Disney and Stage Entertainment produced a new version of the show directed by Glenn Caysale using brand new sets and costumes. After touring the Netherlands and playing in Antwerp, Belgium, Disney and Stage Entertainment brought the show to Berlin, Germany in 2006 after a 1-year run at the Metronome Theater in Oberhausen. This production opened in 2007 in Madrid, Spain, and in 2009 in Barcelona, Spain, and Milan and Rome, Italy. A Russian production of the show opened in 2009 in Moscow, Russia. The Broadway production played a second time in Mexico City beginning in September of 2007 and in Hiroshima, Japan beginning in February of 2008. The Broadway production opened in South Africa in September of 2008 and ran until March 2009. In 2004, Disney began to license the show to other companies for touring, and the show has been performed by professional and amateur companies in many countries. On October 4th, 2013, the Glenn Caysale production of Beauty and the Beast opened at Theatre Mogador in Paris, France. A Russian reveal was staged at the Russia Theater in Moscow. The production came back to the Netherlands for a run at Circus Theater in The Hague. Beginning October 2014, Disney Theatrical Productions, Networks, and Broadway Entertainment Group launched an international tour in celebration of Beauty and the Beast's 20th anniversary on stage. The tour opened at the Zorlu Center in Istanbul, Turkey, and closed in January of 2016 at Dubai World Trade Center, having visited Turkey, United Arab Emirates, Greece, Italy, Philippines, Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, China, Taiwan, Egypt, Lebanon, Romania, and Qatar. In 2016, Disney and Marmalade produced an updated version for the Flemish region of Belgium. The show premiered on December 10th, 2016 at Flanders Expo in Ghent. In 2018, an Estonian non-replica production was produced by Disney Theatrical Productions at the Venemu Theatre. A new Australian production based on the 2021 UK tour opened now at Sydney's Capitol Theatre in June of 2023, and it went on to Melbourne and Brisbane in 2024. Number 8, the amateur rights. The show's rights became available to amateur performing groups and regional musical societies. The show has been performed in numerous countries by theater companies on both an amateur and professional level. The libretto was revised by the original creative team for the 2021 UK tour. Most of the changes, except for the new reduced orchestration, which isn't available for licensing, were added to the official licensed script in June of 2021. Some of the changes include the removal of Maison de Lune and The Battle, optional cuts to dance breaks, and making No Matter What an optional song. The Silly Girls were renamed Les Filles de la Ville. Number 9, the junior version. A junior version of the musical for middle students was published by Music Theatre International, who also owns the rights for the full-length version, aptly titled Beauty and the Beast Jr. This version only included a selected number of the songs, including Belle, Belle Reprise, Home, Home Reprise, Gaston, Gaston Reprise, Be Our Guest, Something There, Human Again, Beauty and the Beast, The Mob Song, Home, Reprise 2, and Beauty and the Beast Reprise. Also in Belle Reprise, The silly girls sing Belle's part in the beginning of the song instead of Belle having to sing the whole song. Also, in Something There, Madame de la Grande Bouche and Babette sing as well. Number 10, the awards and nominations. Be Our Guest was used as the commercial for the 1994 Tony Awards. Michael Goldstein of New York correctly predicted that Mann would earn a Tony Award nomination for his performance. Despite having been nominated for a total of 9 individual awards, Beauty and the Beast was ultimately shunned at the ceremony, winning only 1 award. Nominated for the Tony Award for Best Musical, the production famously lost to Stephen Sondheim's Passion, which is considered to be his own version of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tale. In 1995, some of Ward's costumes, namely Lumiere, were put on display in Nordstrom stores. Meanwhile, Belle and the Beast's ballroom costumes were exhibited at Westdale Pavilion, and Mrs. Potts and LeFou appeared at South Coast Plaza. So the awards that the musical won, they've only won 2 awards. One was a Tony Award for Best Costume Design, and the other was the Laurence Olivier Award for Best New Musical. Number 11, the impact and legacy. Largely due to audience reception, Beauty and the Beast remains one of Broadway's biggest successes of the current era. Beauty and the Beast established itself as a musical that could survive on Broadway despite its enthusiastic reviews. Several detractors had thought that musicals like Beauty and the Beast would be a one-time event, but the results ultimately turned out to be quite the opposite. According to theatrical producer Stuart Oaken, Disney's success with Beauty and the Beast is responsible for today's biggest Broadway hits and making the medium better than it has ever been. The groundbreaking performance of Beauty and the Beast inspired other major Hollywood studios to produce Broadway renditions of some of their own films. Disney soon began to commission Broadway adaptations of several of the studio's most popular musical films, namely The Lion King, Mary Poppins, Tarzan, The Little Mermaid, Newsies, Aladdin, and Frozen, in addition to producing the new musical Ada. After completing her run in Beauty and the Beast, Susan Egan would famously go on to voice Meg in Disney's animated musical Hercules, establishing herself as a popular voice and film actress. Following the success of Human Again, the song was later incorporated into reissues of the animated movie in the form of an animated musical sequence. Beauty and the Beast is considered to be Broadway's first legitimate family show, responsible for birthing an entirely new generation of young theatergoers. The family demographic of the musical established inspired international productions of Aladdin and Matilda. According to the composer book of 1990s Broadway musicals, author Dan Dietz, the show's resounding success opened the floodgates for a spat of productions based on Disney and other family-oriented films, transforming Broadway into a theme park with a parade of musicals aimed at kids and teenagers. Dietz believes that the plethora of Broadway musicals that came after Beauty and the Beast have unfortunately resembled feel-good family shows, whose goal was to emulate its film source. Additionally, the success of the musical inspired a legion of Broadway productions geared towards young women, including Hairspray, Wicked, Legally Blonde, Matilda, and Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. While these musicals flourished on Broadway, it seems as though more serious, adult-oriented fare struggled to perform as well. New York theater critic Howard Kessel famously despised the kiddie component of New York theater going, spearheaded by the successful 13-year Broadway run of Beauty and the Beast. The success of Beauty and the Beast inspired Eisner to invest in his own theater to house future stage adaptations of the studio's animated classics. Original arrangements of some of the show's original songs can be heard playing in the Belle's Village area of Fantasyland and Tokyo Disneyland, which opened on September 28th, 2020. So I have seen Beauty and the Beast. I didn't see it on Broadway, but I saw one of the touring companies. I actually saw it. Funny, this is like a funny story. So Christmas of 2019, my husband surprised me with tickets to see Beauty and the Beast on stage in March of 2020, literally the weekend before the world shut down. We went to go see Beauty and the Beast. Like, it was insane. Like the theater, like, seats were practically empty. Like, barely anybody showed up because of the whole beginning of the COVID thing. Like, everybody was so paranoid about COVID, and we just, like, heard about it. And then literally a couple of days later, after we saw Beauty and the Beast, the world shut down. We just thought it was so funny at that time. Like, also saw it, my high school did the production. After I graduated high school, I was so mad. I was so mad that they did this musical after I graduated from high school. I was very mad. I was upset, but I went there and I saw the show to support my past castmates, and they did an amazing job. It was just, I like, it was just unbelievable. And the reason why this video is so long, it was just packed with so much information because this was the first Disney musical put on the stage. And like the facts have said, like this put a stamp on, like, for musicals down the road. Like after Beauty and the Beast, it opened up a whole new chapter for Broadway, in my opinion. So there you have it. Those are the facts to Beauty and the Beast, the stage version. If you like this video, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. And I hope you have a zippity-doo-dah day. Goodbye.